party? Well, Connor Tomlinson is a political commentator with Young Voices UK and joins me live here on Talk Radio. Morning to you, Connor.
Good morning, Cristo, and at threat of being a little bit early, Merry Christmas.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Gosh, yes, I suppose it is Christmas. It's Christmas to Sage at the moment as well, and I'm not talking about stuffing. I mean, they love all of this locking down and the like, but of course it's something that David Frost was not prepared to tolerate. I mean, does he have a point that we are seeing in Boris Johnson a Prime Minister with a working majority who has chosen to use that working majority to be decidedly unconservative?
He absolutely has a point. I really appreciated, as you said in your opening discussion with Russell, that the entire point of the Conservative Party is to use the market to promote upward social mobility. And then what happens? We voted for Boris on the Libertarian Promise, the Get Brexit Done mandate, to finally rid us of that headache. David Frost came in and said, okay, the entire point of me being pro-Brexit was to unshackle us from the EU's protectionist markets and their sort of centralised planning, very German way of governing the entirety of Europe, to get back to a sort of man in his own castle, Little England, island of shopkeepers way of governing the country. And instead, Boris Johnson, the great libertarian, locked us all in our homes, is going to continue doing that until 2023 if Chris Whitty has his way. The highest taxes since, what was it, the 1940s, post-wartime. Yeah. My graduate tax is now 42% on my income, set to be, if I make over 30K, if that ever happens. And then housing prices are going through the roof for a considerable amount of years to come. So I don't blame Lord Frost for stepping down. The only issue is, and there's a lot of people who are on the sort of more freaky market side, like myself, have said it's a massive wasted opportunity for him to correct Boris. Not that that seems to be a possibility. As you said, he's being very much led by the nose by Carrie and Sage. But now there are even less voices among the cabinet and Boris's inner circle that are telling him, hey, this isn't what you promised in 2019 and this isn't good for the country.
I don't know, were you just listening to Sven Hughes, Connor? I don't know whether that is also tying into this, because not only do you have a sort of rudderless Conservative Party which has strayed into Labour territory, so no real alternative for the electorate, but also it's not a government that seems to fill itself with any sense of glory or pride. There does seem to be a slightly insidious nature to the way in which the public is being treated. It's like gaslighting in some ways, isn't it?
We're in a sort of abusive relationship with the state. It does feel like we keep trying to quit our ex-boyfriend, and he keeps dragging us backwards by the heels and saying, no, next time I'll change. I won't lock you down quite as harshly. And then keeps sort of like stepping on your toes. You take one step back, they apologize, and then by the time you finish realizing how many times it steps on your toes and you step back, you're 6 miles from where you used to be. It is very strange as well. As you said in the start, ideology might be the problem. And I'm actually going to take a leaf from Steve Baker here and quote one of the books that he really believes in and is governed by, and it's Robert Nozick's Anarchy, State and Utopia. And he says that ideology isn't actually commensurate with the truth. Ideology is something you project onto an understanding of the world post hoc, and you shave bits off and you reconfigure the world. It's like a gingerbread man for politics. So the problem is, the Conservative Party shouldn't have an ideology. They should just be saying what is true. And that's a massive problem for Boris Johnson. But it's also a problem with the net zero goal. Now, I work with the British Conservation Alliance, which basically tells the government if they're spending too much money in a particular direction on an environmental policy. But conservation, as you said, should be a really conservative policy. It started with Maggie Thatcher. She was the first world leader to talk about climate change specifically. And whether you think the world is burning in 10 years or whether you think we should just have clean air and water, it should be a conservative-based goal to conserve green spaces. They're not, though.
Where ideology does come in, because to me, if you have a really firm ideology that is low tax, that is, really trying to have a smaller state, trying to incentivize the person to be the best individual that they can be, and therefore everyone benefits from that, well, then everything falls from there. And you can say, right, well, here is a problem over there, climate change being an example of that. Well, how do we solve this problem without infringing on people's rights, bearing in mind my ideology? So we solve this problem by incentivizing people to do the right thing. We solve this problem by people saving money by doing the right thing environmentally. We solve this problem by incentivizing business to solve the problem by coming up with innovative ways to make our climate better and to make it easier to make the better decisions. Do you see what I mean? Whereas if you had a Labour ideology, you'd say, well, actually, no, the state needs to step in. The state needs to sort this out. We need to tax people into oblivion.
Because
So ideology does
this
come
is
into
the
it.
thing. I don't think that's actually the sort of like definition of ideology. That's why you're getting like, libertarians like Steve Baker saying that's just either common sense or respecting individual human liberty. Because if you do things just because they are good, then you're doing things on principle, rather than ideology is doing things to try and get to a particular end goal, like the sort of utopian net zero goal of, let's take a wind power, for example.
Yeah.
Right. Boris thinks that we're going to be the Saudi Arabia of wind. So when I've spoken to people that are like the experts, we went to Whitley during COP26 because we did a bunch of fringe events, and they are the biggest advocates of wind you could find. But even the technicians there who are working on the turbine said, oh, actually, the wind turbines don't make up the energy it takes to make them. We're shipping them from abroad, from either the EU or China, and we actually need something like a nuclear baseline or carbon captured gas to try and stabilize the grid. So they're being very realistic on this. But because all the government advisors, Carrie Johnson's got the green obsession, so she's talking to Boris breakfast in bed and telling him to govern policy, they've got this utopian goal in mind. We're all going to be, holding hands, singing Kumbaya in the net zero future. So they're going to do anything it takes to get there. And so their ideology is delinking them from the common sense perspective that conservatives are meant to have. So that's why I don't think ideology is an answer, putting yourselves in this sort of mental box. I think you just need to stick to the truth. And as we've said, on the Commons floor, anytime he defends his colleagues' corruption, etc., Boris just has a problem with the truth.
And so finally, do you think we're going to see more resignations? Do you think that this is going to be a house of cards now that starts to fall? We saw the rebellion of over 100 MPs. We've seen that the 1922 committee, we've heard rather, that they will now be accepting letters of no confidence in the Prime Minister. We've now seen this really high profile resignation based on a lack of conservative values. What next? Will Boris change direction? New year, new Boris? Or is this the beginning of the end?
I would think it should be the beginning of the end. I would say that not many people are going to want to resign before they try and give Boris the boot, because the Conservative Party can be very cutthroat. The knives are already out in terms of Steve Baker booting Nadine Dorries for defending Boris from a WhatsApp chat, which was very amusing and one of the most alpha male moves possible. And you see a lot of people poison themselves to be in the leadership campaign. I know Jeremy Hunt and Nadim Zahawi this morning have come out as the sort of front runners within the Tory base.
Well, Jeremy Hunt as well, I know on very, very good authority that what he's been doing, everyone thinks that sort of Jeremy Hunt has gone away to lick his wounds. He has been doing the work on constituency level. He has been he was doing what Theresa May did. I mean, Theresa May knew that when she got onto that ballot, because she had spent so much time in constituency level, that she would get that either that nomination or actually make it as Prime Minister. And that is what Jeremy Hunt has spent the last 2 years doing, knowing that this day could come. So I would not underestimate, I don't know whether people would want him, but I don't know whether I would underestimate Jeremy Hunt.
He did a quick recruitment drive around October for at least 1 or 2 new parliamentary advisors and researchers as well. So I think he was sort of expanding his office to see, and it was mainly to do with health and coronavirus, and he wanted to look into how that could shape public policy specifically. So I think he was sort of poising himself to get either a bit more of an influential role in the health department once again, or perhaps this was his leadership bid. I know a lot of people are circulating the name of Liz Truss. Rishi Sunak's looking a bit shaky after all the new party scandals and being criticised for not being around as much. But some of the backbencher names have been thrown into the mix. Obviously, David Cameron wasn't as prominent a name when he jumped in as from MP to leader. We could even see one of the rebels try and make a shot for it. And at this point, I don't think they wouldn't be able to get some of the party support.
Okay, and just finally, final word, Mr. Chaz says, my word, Connor Tomlinson is hot and what a fine voice too. So there you go. Merry Christmas, Connor. Not only are your words being listened to, but you're getting some nice compliments as well.